President Trump wrapping up that news conference just moments ago with Prime Minister Theresa May, who, of course, steps down from party leadership on Friday with the deal that eluded and ultimately doomed her, Brexit, still unsettled. The two leaders started with pleasantries, but they were quickly followed by the president hitting back at the mayor of London and wading into issues both there in London and back here at home.
I'm very pleased to welcome the President of the United States of America on this state visit to the United Kingdom.
Prime Minister May, it's been a true honor. Well, I think he's been a not very good mayor. He should be positive, not negative. I really don't like critics as much as I like and respect people that get things done. I didn't see the protesters until just a little while ago, and it was a very, very small group of people put in for political reasons. So it was fake news. There's nothing more important than borders. I've had tremendous Republican support. Mexico has something to prove. I know Boris. I like him. I've liked him for a long time. I think he'd do a very good job. I know Jeremy. I think he'd do a very good job.
NBC's Hallie Jackson was at that press conference. NBC's Bill Neely outside 10 Downing Street. NBC's Keir Simmons and Richard Engel are on the streets of London for protests. Also joining us, Tom Swarbrick, former advisor to Theresa May and former U.S. ambassador to NATO, and Nicholas Burns. Good to see all of you here. So, Hallie, let me start with you. It was a wide-ranging press conference for only 24 minutes. A lot to unpack, but let's start with what is arguably maybe one of the real nuts and bolts of this conversation, that is trades and tariffs and the possibility of a deal.
Yes. Yeah, and on a couple of different fronts, Chris, right? Because you have the possibility of a trade deal with the UK after this Brexit deadline coming up at the end of October. And I think what you heard from both sides, both President Trump and Prime Minister May, is an acknowledgement, perhaps implicitly, that they've got to get through the Brexit stuff before they can deal with the U.S. trade stuff, right? And the president seemed very positive about the chances for something to happen. I think that Theresa May was pleased to hear that the president did so full-throatedly reaffirm the alliance with the U.K. and, frankly, personally praised her as well for how she has handled this fallout from Brexit, even though the two of them, as they acknowledge, don't see eye to eye on this split for the UK from the rest of the European Union. President Trump said he believed it would be good for the UK. He said he predicted it, or claims to have predicted it, back during the campaign. Theresa May, of course, believes that a more orderly Brexit exit, if you will, is the way to go, even though some in her own party here in the UK don't see eye to eye with her on that. So I do think on trade on the UK front, the sort of bottom line is hit pause, let's check back again in the fall. However, on trade with Mexico, a different story, because the president was asked about his threat of tariffs against Mexico. This is something that, as you know, and our colleagues have been reporting, GOP senators have been upset about and now are working to try to block. President Trump was unapologetic, did not back down from the idea that he would slap these new tariffs on Mexico. And I want to play for you what he had to say about that.
What do you think of Republicans who say that they may take action to block you imposing those tariffs?
No, I don't think they will do that. I think if they do, it's foolish. I've had tremendous Republican support. I have a 94% approval rating as of this morning in the Republican Party. That's an all-time record. Can you believe that? Isn't that something? I love records.
And the president also waded into domestic British politics here, talking about people that he believed could end up being the next prime minister, potentially Boris Johnson. He referenced Jeremy Hunt, the foreign minister who was sitting in the front row there, and slammed Jeremy Corbyn, the opposition party leader, who at the same time President Trump was speaking, was holding a rally just outside of the very ornate and gorgeous courtyard where we are, Chris, for this news conference. And let me just add one thing. I just spoke with the Downing Street press secretary as well, because I think there were some questions about this issue of Huawei. President Trump said it did come up, this idea that the Chinese telecom company may enter into a deal with the British government to be a part of their 5G network. And President Trump said he would not limit intelligence sharing on this, which had been an implicit threat from the U.S., because he was confident they could work out their differences. So I asked James Slack, the sort of British version of our press secretary, Sarah Sanders. If that was the case, if in fact Theresa May did agree to some kind of a deal, he declined to specify anything as far as the details and didn't want to get ahead of anything that May would announce to Parliament, but did reiterate that Theresa May wants to do nothing that would jeopardize or undermine the national security and safety of the UK. Chris.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about protests. He was, and we played a little bit of that bite. He doesn't think that anybody who reports that there are big protests there is doing anything but fake news. But I want to go back to this whole idea of him getting involved, as other presidents have not, in domestic politics when he's visiting a foreign country. And of course, one of the big headlines over there, as well as here, has been his back and forth with the mayor of London. That was a question at this news conference. The president called him a stone cold loser during the flight over. And I want to play what the mayor said about the president earlier just this morning.
That's the sort of behaviour I'd expect from an 11-year-old, but look, it's for him to decide how he behaves. It's not for me to respond in a like manner. I think it's beneath me to do childish tweets and name calling.
What is the White House saying about this and the latest in a long series of breaks with tradition? Going to a foreign country, going after political leaders there, and of course the mayor of London not being the only one.
I'll tell you what the president says about this, Chris, which is, if you don't want me to talk about domestic politics in the UK, stop asking me about domestic politics in the UK. Obviously, that is a command you could say that reporters have not heeded. But the president, unlike some of his world leader counterparts around the globe, is not, how do I say this, Chris? He doesn't like to not answer a question. And whereas you saw Theresa May get asked very sharply, do you think Sadiq Khan is a stone cold loser? She managed to rather diplomatically work her way around that question without ever directly answering it. Oftentimes we see the president lean in. And in fact, he did so with Sadiq Khan. He was asked, and let me just set the scene here for our viewers who may not have seen it. He was asked specifically about Jeremy Corbyn, right? The opposition party leader who has been criticizing President Trump. But I think got a little confused regarding the second question to Theresa May, and so answered the reporter about Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London. And it really was kind of a verbal reading of his latest tweet storm, Chris. Here it is.
Well, I think he's been a not very good mayor, from what I understand. He's done a poor job. Crime is up, a lot of problems. And I don't think he should be criticizing a representative of the United States that can do so much good for the United Kingdom. We talked about it before. He should be positive, not negative. He's a negative force, not a positive force.
And with that, Chris, we are getting pulled out of the room here, so I'm going to toss it back to you in New York, and thanks for holding it down during the show today.
My pleasure, and thank you for holding on there before you get asked to leave. In the meantime, we talked about the protests. We've got that infamous Trump baby blimp flying again over the streets of London. Thousands of protesters marching through the streets. It's something that the president hasn't seemed to notice on this trip.
I don't see any protests. I did see a small protest today when I came, very small. So a lot of it is fake news, I hate to say. But you saw the people waving the American flag, waving your flag. It was tremendous spirit and love. There was great love. It was an alliance. And I didn't see the protesters until just a little while ago, and it was a very, very small group of people put in for political reasons. So it was fake news.
Richard Engel is there right in the heart of those protests. So what are you seeing? Are people who are saying that there are large protests there, in fact, propagating fake news?
Well, I think the president is trying to recreate events here. He is talking about this warm reception he received in the streets of London with people carrying American flags and welcoming him as the leader of the United States, which has this long, special relationship with the UK. We frankly just didn't see that. Instead, we saw thousands of people who were out here denouncing President Trump, lampooning him, carrying humorous banners, flying the balloon of the baby Trump. There was a 16-foot statue that was being wheeled through the streets of the city in which President Trump was seated on a golden commode, a statue that spoke and said some of President Trump's more famous catchphrases, including, "I'm a very stable genius." So him to come out and try to tell the world that there were competing demonstrations, that the larger ones were out welcoming him to this city while they were just some small bust-in demonstrators put there for political reasons is just simply not true.
I want to play what the Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn said speaking to protesters. Take a listen.
I say to our visitors that have arrived this week, think on, please, about a world that is one of peace and disarmament, is one of recognizing the values of all people, is a world that defeats racism, defeats misogyny, defeats the religious hatreds that are being fueled by the far right in politics, in Britain, in Europe and the United States.
So just at the same time, that is there something going on behind you, Richard? I don't want to stop you from being in the moment.
No, not at all. Just trying to keep a sense of what's going on here. What we are seeing is just a lot of rain and a lot of people moving around. But I think what's important, and you've discussed this with some of your guests, is why this is such an emotional and important time in the UK. This country is going through a historic change, a monumentous change, maybe one that is as big of a transition has happened with D-Day itself. This country, a few years ago, decided that it was going to engage in Brexit. It was going to Brexit. It was going to leave the European Union and strike its own path. And that has been a profoundly unsettling consequence for this country. And for the last 3 years, Theresa May has tried and failed to reach a deal. Now in this state where they don't really have a government, they don't know if they're going to go through with this Brexit, and if so, how. President Trump arrives with the state visit. He's feted by the Queen and feted by the royal family. He talks about offering the UK an alternative trade deal that would say, yes, go ahead and leave the EU. The US will be there as the UK's savior. And that makes people here very, very nervous. They're worried about leaving the EU and throwing their lot in with President Trump.
All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. Richard Engel in the streets of London.
Thank you for checking out our YouTube channel. Why don't you subscribe? It's really easy. Just click on that button down there. And for more news from MSNBC, click on any of these videos here for the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more videos from MSNBC with our newsletters. Head over to msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up.